Hi, my name's Ian Peterman, host of the Conscious Design podcast, and I'm here with Ryan Shindler, an architect, and he is also someone that's involved in conscious design, but with a different viewpoint. So, Ryan, I'd love to talk about conscious design and your architect background, and I know you have big goals for what you want to do with that, with those skills and thought process. So, elaborate.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you, Ian, for having me. And yeah, no, my background kind of started, I would say, as a kid, I was always, of course, a lot of architects building with Legos, right? And kind of playing and just kind of, getting my sense for space and proportion, whatever. And so that led me eventually to get my undergrad at Arizona State in architecture, bachelor's degree. And then I went on to the University of Arizona where I got my master's in architecture. And then I also got a second master's of science focusing on health in the built environment. And I really pursued that because it really was something that I've always been interested in, how design and space affects our health and well-being. And so this was more of a kind of taking a more research and theoretical approach to design and really quantifying how every piece of design that we do, how does that make an impact? And so that was kind of what sort of brought me to conscious design. And we're really moving into a place where we're really looking at design and architecture, from especially in kind of my wheelhouse in architecture. We're looking at how does every variable play, and how it impacts us. So that's kind of my biggest passion.
Yeah, and we talked about, last time we talked was how, you know, not we're still building houses out of sticks. We're still, like, the design and manufacturing of buildings is still old, right? We're still using really old technology, and there's a huge disconnect, like industrial design to an engineered product. There's this huge disconnect between what you as an architect start to put together, and you put all that research into, and then it changes and it morphs as it gets to the end, and eventually is not really what you ended up designing. And it's something that, in the product design world, I think you said it feels like we're a little ahead of you guys, but it's definitely something that I experience. I would.
Sure. Yeah. And no, this is something that definitely is, a lot of architects don't talk about this, but especially in our industry. But what I see in the future is that it's we are all better as one. When we have a unified vision and goal, and we're working with suppliers and general contractors and the end user as well. When everybody's aligned on the goal, we can really start to create things that are so far beyond what we see today. What we see today, like 97% of the time, we're seeing value engineered, buildings that were designed to a budget, not the human experience. Not They were designed from the outside in versus the inside out. What I really was passionate about in my studies is one of my really key role models in architecture school in my master's always said, design from the inside out. Like, you're inside the human body and then work outward. And it's really about how can we, think of all the disparate systems, and whether it's mechanical, HVAC, electrical, the EUI, the energy use index of the entire building, the facade system, the layering, all of these things add up. And right now, we're not, the industry doesn't add those up. And then the end, really, who pays is sort of the end user, the person who didn't even have a say in, they're the person who uses that building the most, but they were not a stakeholder or a decision maker. And so, you know, uh, most buildings are not paying attention to that, and that's just kind of a by way of the process that exists today. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see a ton of opportunity streamline that, right? And I think it's really just about getting very clear on who we're building for and why we're building for, and how do we quantify, not just a line item on a spreadsheet to say that, hey, this building costs this much in 2021. It's about, what is the impact does it have today, tomorrow, in 20 years from now, is just as important. And the EUI and in the sustainability factor, what's the life cycle of this whole thing? And maybe that could pay us, actually, we could use future capital today, and then who knows what'll happen in the future.
Right. Yeah, I think it's, and product design, we definitely have things like human-centered design is something that's been pushed forward, and it's, not, it's not the only thing people do. It's not like we fully converted and everybody thinks about it that way, but it's there. And it has a lot of benefits, right? It's looking at the human, like you said, going from the inside out, because we're all humans experiencing this. So if we don't do that, there's definitely going to be a disconnect between, oh, I'm here and I'm experiencing this, or oh, I enjoy it and I was part of it or thought about during the process, and this very, just numbers version of, okay, well, architect did all this great work, interior designer figured out, how to make it feel right, all this together, coming together to make it look and feel and create an experience, because it is. I mean, if 2020 taught us anything, our houses are an experience. We've been stuck in them for a
Yeah.
year, right?
Yeah.
So we've all spent even more time indoors. And yeah, I mean, the houses are not necessarily designed to be the most enjoyable. They're like, oh, well, here's a bedroom, here's a room for you to sleep in, there's a room for you to
Right.
watch TV in, there's a room to cook in.
Yep.
Um, and that's, there's your stick house, the same
Yeah.
that your great grandparents had, just slightly bigger, and it has electrical in the
Right.
walls, right? It has lighting and this
Yeah.
feeling. Like that's the upgrades. If
Right.
it feels like.
It really, yeah, that touches on, yeah, this idea that, we're not that far off from, 100 years ago. We're still building the same way in a lot of ways. I mean, if we really take advantage of all the technology and all of the, resources we have in 2021, I mean, it's unbelievable what we can actually build. And so that's really what I'm excited to, channel my pathways and my passion into. It's really that, if we really think of the building almost like an operating system, I envision buildings, and especially, yeah, you mentioned, this era that we're living in the last year. Um, we've been forced to realize what is shelter, what is shelter in place, what are four walls and a roof. Well, as an architect who's just been so deeply passionate about this basically since I came out of the womb, it's like, no, this doesn't have to be four walls and a roof. In fact, it shouldn't be. It should be so much more. We have to think about everything from the underlayment of the foundation to the macro scale of the superstructure and everything in between. Because when we do that, it's like we can really, there's just so much possibility of what we can do. We can think about buildings as a moving experience, a moving meditation, a way that supports us in our daily lives and our endeavors. One of the things that I'm the most passionate about is, the spaces that architects really traditionally, if you think about, kind of the most uninteresting to them, are the spaces that we spend like 98% of our lives in, which is, the workplace, essential institutions, healthcare. And if we really start to think about, wow, what if it's beyond the workplace? What if it turned the workday into an experience that I actually like want to go to and enjoy? And that, if I'm going to spend 70, if I spend over 93% of my life at work, maybe 70% of that's, or if I spend over 93% of we spend over 93% of our lives indoors. And if, let's say, a majority of that is maybe at the workplace, the 9 to 5, 40 hours a week plus, what if that changed, and what impacts would that have on us? Those are the kind of questions that I pose, and quantifying those and then showing how they can, create a value proposition.
Right. Well, there's definitely something to be said about, not being stuck in the same room. That's that's literally where people go crazy, right? We've proven that works, right? Solitary confinement doesn't do good things to your mind. So thinking about how to make your house a better experience, or like you said, your workplace, like make, you know, yeah, it should be a place of work, but you and I have talked about, well, how do you make work more conducive to creativity? How do you make it
Absolutely.
enjoyable? Like we don't build our houses, and not all of our products either. We don't build them to create an experience that makes the use of them produce more than just I used a screwdriver and I tightened a screw.
Right.
Well,
Right.
that's like the basic level we're at, right?
Yep.
The
Yep.
tool does X. We hope you're okay with holding it because we might have thought a little bit about the
Right.
ergonomics,
Right.
but the door opening is large enough for you to walk through without banging your head on it.
Yep.
But outside of that, the whole process of human center, like what is the experience of it? And I think
Yep.
that's something we've talked about, like conscious design. You need to be conscious and aware of the whole experience, and
Right.
then you can create something better. Like
Yep.
there's an extra layer level that you can go, yeah, we're here, and it can be better. It can be a
Yeah.
lot better.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about something, for example, you take kind of, the product design or screwdriver example and make that into, so then what would I think is an architect sitting, let's say we're designing a workspace for someone and, they're sitting at a desk and, they got four walls and a roof, but let's just blow the doors off that for a second and say, let's start with the orientation of the monitor screen to the window wall, and what is the level of glare coming through the window, and what's the visual transmittance of that glazing material, and is there a second skin facade that's changing its shape and form throughout the day based on where the sun is in the sky, and how does that create an experience when you're sitting at your desk to something more, right? And those are kind of the thought processes that I think are critical, that we need to ask ourselves. Whether it's architecture, or product design, or any design. Yeah, conscious design is really about thinking about just a multi, so many different factors, more than just what is a line in a sketch on a piece of paper. When you really get into this, it's about, okay, this line I draw now, what impact does it have at second zero? What impact does it have a year from now? What impact does it have, at the end of the building's life cycle? And then, not only on what's the impact, more traditionally, we talk about sustainability and the planet. That's all critical. Yeah, how much energy is that building, using? Is it net zero? Is the glazing supporting the facade system so that it has a proper R value and thermal insulation? But beyond that, what I think is most critical is, and we've talked about this, is kind of the human sustainability, right? The piece that we so often forget, that's like, if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't expect to take care of anything else, really, right? Because if we create a space, like when you say that it's so much more conducive to our creativity and health and productivity and well-being, when we're in that state from that space, what happens next? That's the beautiful question. It's like, because I think what we make makes us, and so I think what we really need to critically focus on now is that we make environments for ourselves that take us to the next level. Because like we've just identified, we're still living in the early 20th century in terms of building technology, and um, just the way the Industrial Revolution really revolutionized and streamlined and processes and assembly lines to make things right. And then now we can slap them all together, but most most people are asking the wrong questions still when they design a building. They're just saying, how much does this cost?
Or how
Well,
many
that's
people does it fit?
yeah, cost per square foot, yeah, occupancy, right? And
Right.
those are just like, okay, you know, great questions to ask in 1950, but guess what? We're in 2021, and we have
You got
much.
more questions.
Yeah, exactly. Not that those aren't valid questions. It's just, let's get excited about some great questions.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Asking the right question is, you'll never get the right answer if you never ask the right question. And I think that's like we are. I feel like humans are sometimes a little bit lazy in that we figure out the right question one year and like, we figured it out. And then we just go, we figured it out forever. We
Yeah,
never
and
need to
then
ask another question
yeah,
forever. 3 generations later, nope, same question. Don't ask a different question. It worked. It worked for me. It worked for the next generation. It should work for you.
and it might have been good for that time, right? I mean, but then you got to say, well, okay, what if AI can help me organize the way my window wall shades itself during the day so that I can go have a better day, or that doors will open for me just by me thinking about it, or that the ceiling plane might change color based on my mood. What if we do that? Then what happens? Because we can do that. And so
Right.
let's ask that question.
Yeah, I think the technology is here, and I mentioned a couple of times, and I think it's really important, the impact. Like, we don't think about. We do. We're getting better, right? We're getting better about thinking about the ecological impact. What are we doing to the earth? What are we doing to a forest, to our rivers, things like that? Like, we are getting better. I wouldn't say we're there yet, but we're getting better about it. But there is this whole other, sustainability is beyond just, do I have, sourced material that wasn't made through conflict or slavery and didn't destroy the environment through its product, right? Like, you can cover all those bases, but then it's human. How does the society?
We forgot ourselves.
Yeah, we skipped ourselves, and it's all the way from individual to macro of societal, all of this. And 2020 was great for pointing out some societal issues that
Right.
that are still here, and I don't think we're done. I think there's more. Our road to improvement will be a long one, but it's being aware of those. What is the impact? What is the impact of your building in the community? What does it do to the people living around it, even, right? So as you start looking at this, what is impact? And it's this onion with, I don't think we peeled all. It'd be really hard to peel all the layers off of it.
Yeah.
One conversation, let alone a couple, because there's so many. Your impact is people who drive by it, the people who live near it, the people who work in it, the people who work around it, who work on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You think about,
you're tangential people, right? You go to work, but if you have a terrible experience and you go home, well, now there's all the people at home. You have kids, you have a spouse, right? You have roommates. If you have a terrible day every day, you're not gonna. Maybe theirs is great, but you could ruin theirs, right? You're not gonna. So now you have this wave that ends up happening where impact becomes, well, what you do. I think the butterfly effect's a little extreme, but there is an impact. It does radiate out, and so there's a lot. There's a lot there to think about.
I mean, what you've kind of identified here is that, and this is starting to become a big piece, especially with last year, is a lot of public health professionals have now said architects are the next public health professional. I mean, they're going to join that, I guess, status, because we really do. I mean, this is how it's always been. And I guess, great. Finally, we had 2020 to really mark it down. Like, okay, we really, because what you've identified is that, every responsibility of an architect is so critical, because, and you kind of outlined all of the different layers that can get impacted just by one. This literally comes down to one line on a piece of paper, one sketch.
And you draw one line, and that means there's something going to be there.
You could, yes,
right?
and that could be there for a long, it will be there for a long time. I mean, we really talk about, the permanence of these structures, but again, that's another question, is that we should be designing better so that we can have them outlive more than a generation. I mean, it used to be, you look at, and we've talked about this, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. Look at how those structures have they're celebrated today, and they've withstood the test of time. And but yet the structures we design today, too often, they barely last a generation and then they're torn down.
Right. Yeah, there's no this is something that I include in when I talk about conscious design, is the legacy part. Like, what are you leaving behind?
Yep.
Right? There's like the immediate impacts, and like we just talked about, right? The immediate impact. Somebody drives by it, somebody picks it up, whatever that interaction is. But then there's the, well, especially with larger things, buildings, or I mean, even cars. Maybe we should think about how to build cars to last a little longer, right?
Right.
Like these things that exist, they're going to, if you do it well,
Yes.
you should be you're going to leave an impact, you're going to leave a legacy. It can be a really bad one, or it can be a forgotten one because you didn't actually make an impact. Or like you said, like, let's think about technology and how do we merge technology with what we're trying to do in order to make a house that will last 5 generations. How do we build a living structure that makes sense for a family to live in, for somebody, even somebody to live in their entire life, right? Like
Oh, absolutely.
my grandparents, they started out with 2-story house, and they started getting older. They went back, right? They started with a 1-story. Then they got kids. Then they needed more room. So then you go to a 2-story.
Mhm.
And then your kids all leave. And then you get old and you don't want to go up the stairs anymore. And then you go down. So like there's 3 houses just for the life cycle of one person now, right?
Yeah.
And we used to do one, like one
Yeah.
multi-generational house,
Yeah.
whole family lived in it, 4 generations,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was it, right? That was your family's house. Might not have moved for like 5 generations, and now we're
Yeah.
like move every 5 years, move
Well,
every
I mean,
right.
I think this gets back to also the, you know, if we design, this another layer of the value of designing consciously and just rigorously, and thinking about, the impact of every line you draw and every wall that goes up is, there's this idea that, look at, why do we celebrate ancient Greece still today?
Mm,
Because there's this aura of timelessness. They created things carefully, and they didn't just go and say, we're going to just draw a line and put up a wall, and it costs nothing to, it's cheaper to build, and we have all these abundance of products and services that we can just slap something together. And then, 49 years from now, before it's deemed historic, we can tear it down
right.
and then, build another thing. But then nobody's asking the question of, okay, well, if you're just doing basic math, doesn't that actually cost more to do that? Not only is that the embedded carbon and the sustainability is off the charts horrible with that, but it actually costs us more. So we're really asking the wrong questions, and it also goes to a higher order of a system of, like, this gets into a little bit of just the entire system of developers, or who's funding it, right? Do they own it for a short period of time? Do they get out and then they don't give a crap about where it goes, right? And that could be part of the problem too. But and then I think also it's like, we also don't, I think architecture is the most misunderstood profession, I think. Because I don't think people fully understand, A, the responsibility we have, or B, what does a building really do? What does it mean? How is it?
Mm,
What meaning does it embark to future generations? And what responsibility we have to leave a cultural artifact? Because I think, unfortunately, 90% of the time we aren't leaving cultural artifacts, because, first of all, the system doesn't support it, the systems that exist, or it's that, people don't understand. And so I think, yeah, there's a big portion of this, like, education, that needs to happen on, because it's very easy to just feel like if you don't know architecture, and that's okay. Not, I mean, everybody's got different sensibilities. I happen to be very sensitive to it, but if you just think, oh, there's a building, right? And this is before I went to architecture school. I kind of, sort of had more of a ground level understanding. It's like, oh, there's four walls and a roof, and I could have a general contractor, scribe those up. We could build it and put some windows in it, and oh, it looks kind of nice. Okay, well, but that's not what architecture is. And I don't think
Right.
anybody really understands, the general public really understands that. And there's this artistry, there's this magic that happens when you look at it in a way that's more than that. And
I
I
think
think
it,
that's, yeah.
I think it's interesting because we do know what architects, like if we talk about ancient architecture, like,
Yeah.
oh, right,
Wow.
look at Egypt, Mayans, Greeks, Romans, like any
Right.
ancient civilization, and we go, oh, the architects, right? We say it, and there's like this reverence of, oh, they're amazing architects. Look at what they built.
Hmm.
And then we go, architect today. Okay, cool.
Well,
We're gonna cheapen that. Ignore what the architect said. It's a general
yeah, that's
guideline.
the other thing is
It's a guideline, right? It's just
you're
a
right.
guideline. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and I mean, people, it's like, we just, it's really kind of just, I just, what I seek to do is change that in my own way, and just really go about what I do in sort of, not only educating people on the difference and the value that we bring as designers, but just, and this is design in general, right? I mean, I think it's really like, when people can feel it. Like, I don't think, it's, you have to open the door and sort of inform on what you're doing, but also there's this unquantifiable feeling and emotion that you get when something just was designed well and rigorously. And you know the first generation iPhone and the way that it fit in your hand, or just an architect that designed something so that the scale of the doors and the windows and the proportion of the ceiling and the heights, everything just flows, and you're like, man, I feel at home. And you don't have to go to architecture school to know that, but I do think we need to convey what we're doing, um, so that people can sort of appreciate it more, and then it can happen more often.
Yeah, I think that's a good point is education. If no one appreciates it or knows how to, right? If they don't, it's not like we come out of the womb and we say, oh, I appreciate great art. That's
Right.
great. I love art. I love sculptures. This looks great. Like it doesn't, I don't think it just comes out as a we're born to. We have to look at it and start to understand it. And the more you understand it, then you more do it. And like when I was first starting out as a designer, I designed lasers. And one of the engineers there taught me is like, the secret, one of the secrets to making stuff looking good is a golden ratio. So I design lasers using the golden ratio whenever I can. And we did. That was like one of the things that was done. And it was great. Like it was just, and they did. I mean, the lasers are
Yeah.
not going to be like, they're not the prettiest things on the planet, but
Right.
we could tell the ones that somebody had done it and the ones that somebody hasn't,
Absolutely.
right? And that's just one like little
Yep.
thing. And the more people know about it, the more people will understand. Because part of it too is like that feeling you get. You mentioned like you walk into space and you go, "This is a great space. I just want to sit down.
Right.
I feel at home. I feel comfortable. I feel
Right.
safe. Like you're getting
Yep.
everything is just really nice." And I think too much of that is it's a little too etheric. We look at, things of like feng shui and other
Yeah.
cultures version of
Right.
that, and we go, oh, that's either really woo weird or not real.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I've known people who set up, spaces for like Macy's stores that they're feng shui masters at that
Right.
skill, and they use it because when they follow those principles along with, and they pull from all kinds of things, right? It's not just one,
Yeah.
but
Right.
they pull from all that and they go, well, yeah, we can tell the difference between before and after. We can create a place that people want to stay and shop instead of feeling, it's okay, I'm going to grab my thing and run, right?
Yeah.
So if you can do it for people like that are shopping, you can
Yeah.
really do it for your house,
Well,
right?
you know, retail is they've really capitalized that on that, right? You know, I mean, you look at because they've been able to quantify, right? Because
Right.
retail,
Oh, they can map
they
out
know their
people.
sales, they've got their line items on a spreadsheet like you can't believe, which, you know, good for them. They and you'll see in a lot of, you know, grocery stores for the last um like 5 years, you'll notice how they switched out the color temperature of the lights and to very specific, even down to like Walmart will have a very specific color temperature on the vegetables, right? And the fruit, in the
Right.
produce section, so that, you know, you get to see the color and you're more intrigued, you're more invited to go, you know, purchase that.
Because it makes a
Um,
difference.
it does. It does.
Right.
And you know, you could say that, hey, you know, Walmart's got better lighting on their produce section than 90% of houses in America. Like,
Oh,
why is that
definitely.
happening?
Oh, absolutely.
You
We're
know, and so, and it's really, you know, you talk about too, yeah, the golden section, or the golden ratio. It's one of those things too where these are all things that have been around. It exists, feng shui, right? It's you know
it's
what
old.
we're now what
It's old. It's very old.
yeah and so it's like, you know, it's so, but what we're getting at now with conscious design is we're now quantifying. We're saying, wait, feng shui actually we're now able to track through, for example, through neuroaesthetics and EEG headsets to say that, oh, our brain waves prefer those, you know, layouts. And
Right.
that's really the power that we have, in this era that we live in. That's what I kind of reference is we need to take advantage of that and really, use that as because it's a massive asset when we can say someone's, you know, EEG, neural mapping is showing that they are, you know, more calm with this layout. And, you know, it might even come down to moving a wall 2 inches and moving a windowsill down maybe, you know, a half an inch, let's say. You know, it actually makes a difference. We can now, study that. And so that's really magical because then as designers, we're, you know, I think design up until now, maybe we were more touchy feely, which it should always be. There should be this balance, but conscious design and being rigorous, it's about saying, okay, well, there's some other variables now I can pay attention to, and I should pay attention to because I'm really making an impact here, you know. And if I can move that windowsill a couple inches and that changes somebody's outcome in an inpatient unit in a hospital, wow,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, especially in that. I mean, if you can increase, surgery success or decrease recovery time by how enjoyable the place is that you're
and
that
and
you're
we
in, right?
like, and we can and we now do, and we it's very critical that we continue to, because that's our responsibility, you know, as designers, and especially, you know, in my field in architecture, it's, you know, that's our, we are serving the public, right? And you know, you know, we are sort of responsible to use all of the latest, you know, tools and resources to our advantage and to, you know, make a better impact.
Yeah, and I think it's great that we have the technology now because touchy feely stuff generally is not something that people, right, if you are and you get it, then you get it, and if not, you kind of go, it doesn't make sense. And being able to check people's neurology, what's going on in their minds, and say, yeah, look, we did this and this increase, quantifying the touchy
Yeah.
feely, then,
Right.
because that's part of it, right? Is you mentioned, like, it's cost cutting, and you go through, you architect something and then they go, okay, well, cost cut, cost cut, cost cut. And it's because you don't, the only reason people do that is because they don't see value. If
Right.
you can add in, we're like, no, no, you need to pay for that door, because that door actually gives, like, you can quantify and say,
Yep.
these things do actually matter, and the way I've
Yep.
designed it provides this value. If you swap out for this other cheaper stuff,
Right.
this value begins to decrease. And I
Yep.
think quantifying that
Absolutely.
value of, you can walk into a space, or, people that do retail, they can walk into a space and go, oh, you move this chair 3 inches here, you move this here, I need that wall pushed over here, different color over here, and I need a blue light here. And it's probably all a bad combination, but whatever they say, they can walk into a room and just go, this is what it needs.
Exactly.
And then you can be the person standing there watching them, and you can tell the difference if you feel a room change. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing, but I would have had no idea how to do that. Right.
Right.
And be
Right.
able to quantify it though and say,
Yep.
here, I'm going to
That's
move it 3 inches because of this.
absolutely.
I'm going to do this
Absolutely.
because of this. And I think that that quantification, and we have the data, we have all the tools.
Yeah.
We can read heart rate, we can read body temperature, we can read all that stuff. The
Absolutely.
smartwatch does half of that,
Oh
right?
yeah, I mean,
So
people's, let's say, people's been wearing these biometrics now for what? We're at almost a decade of this, and it's like, well, think of all the data we already have on it. It's like we're sitting on, these data
treasure
lakes.
trove.
Yeah, yeah, and so, yeah, it's really exciting what we can do with that, and that's really one of my big passions is what you've sort of just identified is it's translating it, right? It's not everybody speaks architect, not everyone speaks designer, and that's okay. But let's do a little bit better job of translating what we do and how we do it and why we do it. And it's amazing what can happen. And a lot of some designers might be a little bit afraid of hard numbers and science and research, but guess what? It's an asset. You choose to look at it as an asset that you get to plug and play with as much or as little as you want, but that it's a piece of your design process because that's information, right? It's kind of like, if I were to go drive down the street without, a gear shifter. Well, I mean, now we can do that today, but let's say without a steering wheel, or we're getting closer to things, but the more we take out, let's think about certain things in inputs. It's like you're just that much more rigorous, and what's going to happen is that much more amazing, I think.
Yeah, well, that's one of the most important things I think with conscious design is observation. If you can't observe it, you can't be aware of it. If you're not aware of it, you can't do anything about it, right? There's no without that input,
Right.
you're blind to it. And obviously we've made it through the ages so far without all the input, but we have so many more things that
Yep.
can give us input. It's silly really to not go, well, let's look at all the inputs. Let's look at this information and figure out how do we design with all of the knowledge that we can have rather than just looking at our little window we've been looking at for the last
Yeah.
100 years. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
oh, awesome.
Yeah. I think that no, that definitely is kind of my excitement right now. So it's exciting to see what we'll do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see what you do on the architect side. And yeah, this has been really great chatting with you.
Yeah,
I
you
love our
too. Absolutely.
conversations.
Absolutely.
So for anyone listening or watching, where can people find you?
Yeah. So I'm currently launching my website, CoShape.space. And I know, Ian, you'll have the links to follow, and you can also check out my LinkedIn. And yeah, that's kind of my main piece.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. Love our conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Probably do
having me.
it again. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.